Happy Monday. And thanks for coming in on such a beautiful night out there. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's out there. A what? It's definitely a dirigible. All right, so yeah, we'll do what we always do. So we start with some meditation, and then we'll take a break, and then I'll talk some Dharma words, and then we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll have some metta and some announcements. Yeah, and some Dana, Dharma and Dana. Hey. So taking a moment here to just settle in, move a little bit, even stretch, mm, wiggle some, get comfortable. One of the most supportive things we can do for our meditation practice is to get comfortable, but not too comfortable that you want to fall asleep. Mm. And then taking a few nice long breaths. If you're feeling a little tired or lethargic, you can emphasize the inhale. If you feel energetic or excitable or restless, you can emphasize the exhale. And then as the body begins to still, the breath becomes more natural. You can begin to uh, just sort of bringing the awareness into the body and just looking around a little bit within, noticing what's here in the physical body. Tightness, openness, fatigue, restfulness, whatever's here. Really important when we come to our cushion or begin to meditate that we're not curating or trying to curate a specific experience. Meditation is all about what's here now. So we don't want to cultivate judgment or not good enoughness. So we just notice and see what's here. And we notice the energy body. What's the energy like? Scattered, still, divided. And we notice the mind, full, expansive, clear, foggy. What sort of links all of these things is the breath. So drawing attention to the breathing. you draw the attention to the breathing, you might notice there's a physical quality to it. There's a emotional quality to it. There's an energetic quality to it, a mental quality. See if you can just maintain an awareness of the entirety of the body while breathing. And so it's almost like the breath is moving through the entirety of the body. Like each time you inhale, the whole body expands, and each time you exhale, the body contracts. Nothing forced. Get distracted, start to kind of become a story or get wrapped up in a story. And just gently guide the attention back to the breathing. When you get distracted and you notice that, that doesn't mean something's going wrong. It means something's going right. You're noticing. Reminder here, if you've gotten swept up in a stream of thinking, it's always nice to take a nice long breath. Draw the attention back through the body, out of the head, into the body. Maintaining the breath at the as the foundation of our experience here, but start to feel out a little bit from the body. And so allowing awareness to any amount feel out of the front of the body. Could be a few inches or a few feet or even further. Just feeling the space in front of the body. Even breathing into that space. Feeling breathing out of the left side of the body. Again, any amount. The right side of the body. back of the body. So feeling into the space behind the body, breathing into the space behind the body, even exploring the back body a little bit, just because we can become so unfamiliar. We'll stay here for a minute. Dancing through the back body into space. Yeah, feeling out of the top of the body, the body, all directions. Any amount. becomes difficult to maintain a sense of spaciousness, you can always have a little tighter container. Maybe just pay attention to the breath, rising and falling of the torso, gathering attention around the heart space. Ever feel supportive? Great. Thank you all so much. We'll take a little break now. Um, 5 minutes, body break. So stretch, do a little walking, whatever you need. So 6:38 or 38 past the hour. Yeah. So nice sitting with you in silence. Yeah, I love it. Um, the silence kind of it reveals so much. uh, the thinking, the movement, it all comes out of stillness, and the sound comes out of silence. So it's really beautiful to be in the silence and just notice what's there. And then really that's what our meditation practice is all about, is it's about creating a space for things to be revealed. Yeah, that's different than our normal patterning. Because being silent is I don't know if there's anything more countercultural you could do than sit still on a cushion and be silent. Exactly. Yeah. So it's always, I'm really grateful for that. And I know it's hard. It gets really difficult, but there's so many fruits that come from it. Like I always wonder, like uh, a butterfly emerging from the cocoon, that whole process, the chrysalis process, if that's painful, or a tree's roots breaking through the ground, scraping against rock, shedding skin of a snake or a spider. Um, these processes, um, breaking new ground, of growing. Um, but that challenge, it's how we grow, right? And so their tendency is to just be very comfortable. So sitting on our cushion and being quiet in a society that tells us to do everything but that uh, isn't easy. So I respect you all very much for doing that. So we start this whole process of meditation or moving towards awakening, or and it sounds really exciting. I remember how exciting I was, like, oh, Buddhism, like get enlightened, and you see these Buddhas and with the halos, and it's all very exciting. And then you know you go to the center and you sit on the cushion, and or you go on retreat, and it gets not exciting very quickly. Because what we're looking for is like this kind of what we've been trained to look for is this sort of transactional relationship. I put in the time on the cushion, I should get something back, kind of thing. And it doesn't really work like that. And so it's not like awakening is just sort of waiting for us, um, to sit a certain amount of hours on the cushion. It's like I've done 10 retreats, 10 days each. I've done this many day longs. I've gone to this many things, and I'm still not enlightened yet. It's like this thing of collecting, of gathering, this, we do to get something. And that's not really how it works. Yeah. And so really what the practice is all about is learning how to see in a different way. So if we approach the practice and we don't change how we see things, then it will stagnate or will kind of keep moving in circles over and over and over and over again. And so when that happens, that should be an indication that perhaps we haven't learned to see correctly yet. And there's not one way. There's not one way to see. What we're do what's kind of conventional is we're only seeing in one way. And really, Buddhism, this teacher I really like named Robert Bea talks about Buddhism. Our practice is really how to see in many ways. So we're learning how to look at things from many different angles and many different ways, and that's how we uh, begin to see fruit. When we see suffering, it's an indication, or when we feel suffering, it's an indication that somewhere we're attached. Yeah. And so the suffering is a pointer to where we're attached. And so we have to look at the attachment in a different way or create a different relationship with that attachment so that it can be released. It's the only way to do it. And so we can spend a lot of time, me, for example, just kind of waiting for something to happen, doing all the things, um, going to the trainings and doing all the retreats. Uh, I remember being on a retreat once at a center, and there was a person there in one of my small groups who, when it came time to check in, they sort of gave off their resume of their meditation life. It was long. It was like 30 years of stuff. And I noticed them because I was sitting behind them, and they had, like, they probably needed this, but a whole mountain of like cushions around them. And I remember at the end, like they were at the first sitting, they're like, "We need some more cushions because not everybody has a cushion." And I was like, "You could give one." But uh, I remember we were leaving after the retreat, and I was behind this person, and he left the retreat, and the first thing he did was, like, somebody kind of was going slow in front of him, and he was like, like, after 10 days. Uh, it was just really funny because it's like, if you don't learn to see in a new way, you're just collecting another retreat. It's not transforming you. Just thought it was really interesting. I don't mean to judge that person, but there's some things I noticed. So what the Buddha really taught was that awakening is always here. It's always here in the present. That's why the Buddha was very, very adamant about being present and seeing directly without views. There's always this. It's always talking about shedding views and shedding perspectives, because we can get really locked in a particular view or a particular perspective, and that's one way of looking. We can get locked in one way of looking, and we can be really adamant about this belief or this thing, and that just keeps us stuck and keeps us in suffering. It's not until we shed the view or shed the perspective that it releases, and then we can transform the suffering into something else. And so we have to learn to see in different ways and be willing to let go of particular things, of particular places where we get stuck. This is from the Buddha. He says, bhikkhus, when he says bhikkhus, he's talking to practitioners. Um, he says, bhikkhus, the reason you keep spinning around in circles is that you do not see and know clearly. So he's not promoting a view. He's not promoting a perspective. He's promoting seeing clearly. Um, views distort that seeing clearly. So this, say it simply, we're learning to see and know what we're seeing, and that's really what mindfulness is all about. And so the Buddha had many maps. I like to think of them as maps that he laid out, these lists, and just had a mind like that. The Buddha saw things clearly and then tried to map it out for the practitioners to follow. Um, but as we all know, that maps are not territory. It's not the same thing. And so really the teachings are there to be practiced, not just known, and to be embodied. To the Buddha taught us, he encouraged us to take what he knew, what he was teaching, try it on. If it works for you, great. If not, leave it behind. Um, and so he laid out these maps to help us along the way. And these maps are not maps that lay out the ultimate reality. They're maps that help us to see in different ways. Yeah, to help us see in different ways. And so one of these maps that he laid out was called the five khandas, or the five skandhas. Skandha is the Sanskrit word, khanda is the Pali word. And that word just means a heap or a pile of things that come together and make something else. Um, and so he wasn't trying to describe ultimate reality. He always avoided doing that. And we always have to think of the Buddha teaching practice. He was very tunnel vision in the sense that he was only teaching us practice. Anytime they asked him, is there a self? Is there not a self? He refused to answer that question. Anytime he, is asked, is there, all of these questions about ultimate reality, he never answered that question because to do so would be to encourage a fixed view, of something. And really, again, the whole idea is to let go of fixed views. Yeah. At the end of the Metta Sutta, it says by not holding to fixed views, awakening happens, basically. So it's about shedding, letting go of fixed views. And these fixed views I'm talking about are fixed views about ultimate reality, not relative reality in a sense. So we can have views on oppression or racism or things like that, that he's not saying not to take positions in that way. What I'm speaking to is this bigger view, this bigger way of how we see reality. And when we see clearly, we can allow that ultimate reality to inform how we act in our day-to-day lives in this relative world. Yeah. And so the primary um, sort of benefit of that is that when we are informed by ultimate reality, our primary concern is the awakening of all beings, all those around us, have the opportunity to awaken with us. So these khandas, I, I really like the khandas. they're, I think they're really brilliant. So he talked about the five khandas. So the first one, I'm going to talk about one of them tonight, but I'll just lay them out for you. So the first one is called rupa, or form. So there's form. There's feeling, which is Vedana, which Vedana means feeling tone. It's sort of like the undercurrent of how we experience things. The third one is perception, or sanya. The fourth one is mental formations, which is sankhara, which is what I'll be talking about more tonight. And then the fifth one is consciousness, vijnana. And it's really interesting because you can think of each khanda as this window to see reality through, that uh, allows us to awaken to the emptiness of things. I'll explain that here in a moment. So when he was teaching, and really, with the khandas, he'd called the sankar the khandas. I forget exactly how he put it, but these are basically five ways we get attached. Five things that cause suffering. So form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And so when he laid this out, he gave similes for each one of these. So the form khanda, he described as like a lump of foam, rolling down a river. Yeah. So what from a distance may look like a singular object upon further examination is just a series of tiny bubbles that are really empty. Yeah. It's a conglomerate of a bunch of different things, a heap, a khanda. That's what form is. So just like this form, this form, this form, we see them as forms, but in actual reality, they're a composite of a bunch of different things. Feeling, Vedana, he talked about as a bubble on the river. So the bubble has a limited lifespan, a feeling tone. If we allow it, it shows up and pops. Yeah, feeling tone. Perception, sanya, or we could think of this as views. We could think of this as opinions. Perception is a mirage in the distance. We think it's real, but upon further examination, it's just a conglomeration of a bunch of different opinions and things. Yeah. Mental formations or sankharas, which is, I'll go into more detail about it. In a way, it's like kind of the most complicated one. But he described it as a banana tree. And so a banana tree isn't really a tree. It's more related to grass from my understanding, but or kind of like bamboo. It's hollow in the middle. So he describes someone looking for heartwood in a banana tree, and you keep peeling back the layers, and you start to see that it's just layers and layers of more and more leaves that come together, and the very center is hollow. So there is no center, it's hollow. There's nothing there, it's insubstantial. And then consciousness, he talked about it as a magic show. It's an illusion, which maybe we'll talk about that some other time. So all of these, obviously, they point towards the impermanent nature of all material reality or all of our experience. Um, and we look through each one of these windows, each one of these views, each one of these ways of seeing, and we see that they're all empty. There's nothing substantial about it. So to attach to them is to create suffering. Thinking of this reminds me when uh, I started out as a Zen practitioner, and we would chant the Diamond Sutra over and over again, which I really liked doing. It's really fun. But this is the part. It's called like the heart of the Diamond Sutra. It says, "So you should view this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom and a dream." And so we would chant that over and over again. We get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. It was really fun. So that's kind of a poetic translation. The more accurate translation is as a lamp, a cataract, a star in space, an illusion, a dewdrop, a bubble, a dream, a cloud, a flash of lightning. View all created things like this. Yeah. And so sankharas, there are many ways it's translated, and I have my favorites, but it's you usually hear it as mental formations or volitional formations. Other translations are fabrications, so something that's fabricated, a synthesis, so something that's synthetic, programs. I like program, I'll tell you why in a minute. A construction, a condition. And basically, it points to just various components coming together to create a conditioned pattern or a conditioned tendency. So um, they can be culturally conditioned, they can be conditioned by religion, they can be conditioned by family, they can be conditioned by relationships. In a sense, everything in our life, all of our conditioning is just, this a series of sankharas, like these programs. And I like the word program because, you know when you like when you run a program on a computer, it runs the program. You hit start and it goes. And so sankharas, we can usually recognize them through triggers. So there will be a particular trigger, and then we fall in this kind of sankharic tunnel. So what I automatically think of is like road rage. If somebody gets upset on the road, like it's almost like they're possessed, right? Like there's a trigger, they get cut off, they take it personally, and then they're going down this wormhole, this program. Yeah. And so we're doing this all the time. In fact, many people, most people are just kind of going from jumping from program to program to program to program to program to program. I kind of think of it like a pinball machine. It's like trigger, path, trigger, path, trigger, path, trigger, path, trigger, path. And they're always kind of moving through this sort of programmed by past conditioning. And I'm sure all of you have I mean, obviously I have, but I'm sure all of us have been caught in something like that. There's a trigger, usually, our close partners or family members or big ones, there's a trigger and there's a pattern, and we just go through it again and go through it again and go through it again. And when we're caught in it, it's difficult to see, right? It's difficult to come out of. And when you're caught in it, it's not only difficult to see, it's difficult to stop. And so we have these, there's good ones and there's bad ones. And one of our jobs in meditation is to uncover what's skillful and what's unskillful. Is this pattern, is this sankhara, is it skillful? Or is it something unskillful that I should reprogram in a sense? And so in many ways we're deconstructing. And meditation is like this deconstruction process so that we can rebuild in a more skillful, more wholesome way. And so sankharas construct our experience. I also like the word construction. So sankharas are a construction, but also the act of constructing as well. It's interesting when, because I was a carpenter for a really long time. And I worked on I did everything from framing houses to fine carpentry and furniture and stuff. And when you have built a house, you no longer see it as a house. You see it like when I see a house, like I see how the joists were put together and the walls, how they were put together, and all the inner things and the drywall and all this. You see all the parts. You see all the construction. Yeah. And so that's kind of what we're doing in meditation. We have these constructions and we look into them to see all their little parts. Yeah. And only until we see all those little parts, all the parts that make up this construction, until we see that, uh, or we have to see that in order to deconstruct it in a sense, it helps for sure. And these sankharas aren't really our fault. They're kind of programmed into us in all these various ways. And so we can beat ourselves up for these patterns. Many of them are protective mechanisms or ways we, sort of try to avoid fear or different things like that. And so you can think of them as the stories we live by. And some of these sankharas, some of these stories, they're deeply embedded, like etched in stone. They're really in there. They take some time. Some of them are just kind of like traced on sand or drawn in water, and they're easier. And so this is work. We're doing the work. That's when we sit, like in the beginning, I was talking about we sit on our cushion and we soon realize, wow, this is not easy. This is difficult. Like this is embedded deeply. And a lot of people, you know, don't want to meditate anymore because it's hard. It's hard. And so the path is not easy. This path is about waking up to these things. Another way to say it is tendencies, the tendencies that we have. And so the way we work with them is to see them and know them and to be honest with ourselves, how they operate, when they're operating. And again, as I said, if we're caught in them, it's difficult to see them. And really what sort of breaks the spell for me is that once it's seen, there's a knowing there that what is seen is not the thing. Once you see the sankhara, the construction, the thought, the series of thoughts, whatever is seeing that is not the thing itself. And so right there, you can see that there's an automatic breaking of that. And so we're creating more distance between the knowing and the known, more distance there. Because what's knowing is who we actually are. We're not the known, we're what is knowing. So one of my sankharas that I think of, and I actually heard this in a Dharma talk, and it directly uh, was exactly something that I've experienced. So I'm kind of taking it from somebody else, but it's also something that I experienced as well. Just reminded me of it. So I used to have this big aversion uh, to asking questions in public, especially in Dharma spaces, uh, because for various reasons. But so I just avoided it, or I avoided like talking at all, like sharing, but especially asking questions. And I noticed, like, when I went at the Zen center, the teacher sometimes would have open questions, and you get done with the Dharma talk, and he'd say, um, uh, "All right, let's discuss this, or let's ask questions." And I have this feeling that would shoot through me, like this, "Ugh, I'm gonna get away from this." Um, and so I just kind of said, like, "Oh, I'm just kind of a shy person," or "I'm, I just don't like asking questions," or I want like a good Dharma answer would be like, I don't need to know the answer. Like the answer will show up when I need it the best. So I had all these stories, these sankharas around this thing, with this bigger sankhara. And one time I was at home listening to a Dharma talk and on recording, it had happened years before, and I was listening to the Dharma talk. And at the end of the Dharma talk, this old Dharma talks, a few years old, at the end of it, he said, now let's have some questions. And that same feeling shot through me. And that's when I realized I was like, wow, I'm not there. The Dharma talk happened a couple of years ago and it's still happening, you know, like, what is that? What is that? And so I investigated that. And what started to come up was, I was shamed a lot. I was very inquisitive as a child. And I was shamed by my parents for asking questions. I'd actually get in trouble for asking questions um, by my mother and my father. And going in through school, I had various experiences where I asked a question that uh, like my ADHD brain wasn't always on track with what was going on, so I didn't hear like every part of the lecture or whatever, and I'd ask the question and be like, "We already talked about that, Adam," uh, and so there is all this conditioning around asking questions, and uh, and that's where that came from. That's where it started. That was a sankhara that built up, and I created all this story and justification around it. And that's just one example, but I'm sure you can relate or think of something right now that you have or that you've experienced that is just a story. And once I saw it, it's not like it went away. I had to work with it over time. The worst thing I could have done is like walk into the Zen Center the next week and just start asking a bunch of questions. It's like that's like the reverse, and it's like the opposite. Now, after years, I'm fine. I'm fine asking questions, and if I look stupid, I don't really care. Um, so because worked with it for a while, but It's just an example, that happens all the time. Or, you're watching a movie and something start crying for, some reason, it's like it's not real logically, but there's something there. And so traumas and various things, they create these imprints or these programs within us that run, um, from a based on a trigger usually. And so, yeah, like I said, a lot of a lot of the things are just we just chalk them up to our personality. That like, I'm just that type of person, or that's how I was raised, or you know, I'm from the South. You know, but these are all just conditions that can be changed. I am from the South, by the way. Uh, so we can see how meditation and mindfulness would be very helpful here, right? This becoming quiet and allowing things to arise and be seen. And that's what insight is all about. The Nevada City Insight Center, insight meditation, Vipassana. It's about seeing into or seeing in different ways. That same teacher I was talking about, Rob Burbea, he talks about it as seeing. That's a hard word to say for me. Seeing that frees. So we see in order to free ourselves, but also to free the emotion or free the thought or free the sankhara, free the things. Yeah. So we have to see them, and then we can have the capacity to free them. We can only see if we look in. So that's what insight is: seeing, looking into. Sorry, time's getting close, so I'm trying to shorten things. And one of the best ways we can do this is by becoming fully embodied, because the body, the being in the body has various clues of when we're getting caught. And the biggest one is we tend to contract in some way. We tend to hold something. Um, if you really sit and watch and you're in the body, you have thoughts that come up or emotions or whatever. There's usually a physical accompaniment to that thought or that emotion or something. And so these things get caught in the body. There's a which that really shows you uh, where to look, where to look. And so there's a contraction or a holding or a protection, or my teeth, like my jaw kind of cranks down. There's various things, there's various clues, like something's not right here. And there are these little sufferings, these little discomforts. And again, suffering is the clue that we're attached somewhere. So it's the pointer. And so suffering in many ways, like I said, is the way. Suffering is our path, because suffering is showing us where to be free, where we can be free, where we can become free, to where to look in. And so moving from the unskillful towards the skillful, this is really what in Buddhism, when we talk about wisdom, wisdom is really about discerning what is skillful and what's unskillful. And we want to move towards what's skillful, move towards what's wholesome, because that's a more direct path to waking up to reality as it is. That's what it's all about. When the Buddha talks about the sila, which is morality, it's not about being good. It's not about like commandments that I can judge you about. That's not what it's about. It's about moving towards skillful, this direct path to awakening. So I'm not burdened by these other things, right? When I'm unburdened by the various things that weigh me down in this world, then I can more directly move towards awakening. That's what it's about. Um, and so the wisdom to discern, to see, and move towards what's skillful. And so my encouragement is just to become like, daringly simple in your practice. The more simple we can become, the less stuff we throw in, the more we'll be able to see. The clearer the waters will become so that we can see through them. And one of the most important things we can do as practitioners on this path is to really examine how we see ourselves on the path. Like what is your view of yourself on this path? The Buddha told us all that we're all Buddhas. Do we really, believe that? What is my conditioning around that? Like not good enough? Am I good enough? Is this path really realistic? Can I really wake up? Can I really sit every morning? What are our beliefs around the practice? Examining that is one of the most important things we can do as practitioners. How do I see myself? Do I need more stuff? Or can I become radically simple? Do I really believe I can awaken? Do I really believe I can become enlightened? Uh, these are important things to answer for yourselves, because how we see ourselves on this path makes a huge difference. Do I really believe that I'm an expression of Buddha nature? Yeah. Or will I not let myself believe that? When we examine that, it's going to show us so much about how we live our lives in general. Yeah. Do I really believe I'm a Buddha? There's so many directions going on in my head right now. I could go, but I should probably start wrapping this up here. Another really important thing is just to understand that this is all mind. This is mind. This is where everything that we're experiencing is happening through the mind. And the mind is malleable. The mind is changeable. We can change it. Uh, this is not an impossible thing. Everybody has the capacity to wake up. I'm just going to end with this quote. Ajahn Chah, famous quote, but I find myself contemplating it pretty often. You've probably all heard it again, or heard it before, but just take it in. Just try to be mindful and let things take their natural course. Then your mind will become still in any surrounding, like a clear forest pool. All kinds of wonderful, rare animals will come to drink at the pool, and you will clearly see the nature of all things. You will see many strange and wonderful things come and go, but you will be still. So we become still and things naturally arise. It's it's uh, it's moving into a more natural way of being. And we trust in that way of being, that what needs to be revealed will be revealed if we give it space and time. Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. I think we have time for half a question. If anybody has anything burning right now. Um, Douglas.
Great. Douglas, let me hand this to you.
I was very affected by the first time I heard the teachings on the five skandhas. And I adopted or received it as a very practical teaching on how we experience relative reality more than, how we suffer. And the form of what's showing up, there's an immediate kind of this is good, bad, or neutral. Then the perception is a little bit of a description.
Hmm.
And then the mental formation seemed to me like it fleshes out the story of our relative experience. And then the consciousness being what's the observer
Hmm.
of what's observing it. Anyway, this is how I always came to experience this teaching.
Hmm.
Possibly there's some correction.
I mean, if it works, if that works for you, that's just a different way to see the khandas. So it's like, there's all these different ways of seeing. So if that's meaningful for you, then that's great. But there's a different way of seeing them. Like, the Buddha used the khandas in his very first sermon with the Four Noble Truths as things that we attach to that cause suffering. So that's how he talked about it, in that way. But if that's meaningful for you, that's great. I would never, say you were wrong or that was a wrong interpretation of it. But it can be seen in many different ways. So yeah, that's great. But yeah, really what the Sankara is pointing to is really just sort of these beliefs and these stories that we have adopted over time, whether consciously or mostly unconsciously, that uh, that we've sort of lived by, these belief systems or these various things. But you can have skillful khandas or skillful sankaras as well, so skillful stories. And yeah, I like your interpretation of it. Yeah, yeah, the positive spin. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any question maybe online?
Question in the back. Okay. Hi. Um, I don't know if it's super related, but I just had something come up really strong. Um, what if in a way you'd almost rather suffer than let go of certain attachments and perspectives because it feels worth it in a way? Maybe. I don't know. That might be unrelated, but
No, it's related. We worth it. How?
just somehow um because of like hmm, the value it feels that it brought to your life or
Hmm.
something in a way it's worth suffering for.
Hmm. Yeah, in many, like I was talking about before, our meditation practice in many ways is like one long suffering, but there's fruits that come from it. So it's like there's a skill to it. Um, what you were saying before, when you at first just reminded me that sometimes, we choose suffering because it's more familiar. And so um it's scarier to go into the unknown, so we'd rather just kind of, you know, be with something that's familiar even though we're suffering. But I think you're talking about something different. There is some value, uh like Ajahn Chah used to say, we suffer the little sufferings so that when the big suffering comes, that we're ready for it. And so those little sufferings are conscious things that we do when we sit on our cushion, or we work through sankharas. So there is some value in this like volitional, you know, skillful way of suffering in a sense. But yeah, I think I hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Time for one more.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, the question that comes to mind listening to you, I've been practicing for some years. And I find myself getting caught in this expectation that there's going to be this big breakthrough, opening, awakening.
Hmm.
Many times I have these beautiful moments, a little something happens, just little things. And then there's this wonderful clarity
Hmm.
that totally affirms my practice and why this is so profoundly important for me. And then at the same time, I have this big thought in the back of my mind, not quite good enough. There's
Mm.
this other big opening. And until you really go through that big gate, you're wasting your time
Hmm.
or something like that. It's a judgment. It's a big judgment.
I know exactly what you mean.
Anyway, I'd be curious about any thought you might have about that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about with how you view yourself on the path. That's one of the things that's a big pattern is this, we keep awakening in the future. And as long as we keep doing that, it's going to stay in the future. And so it's all available right here and right now. And so those little awakenings are just like, pinpoints that are shining the light through. Like, hello, like it's here right now. It's like not out there. So it's there. It's there. It's just like, you know, we change our way of seeing. That thinking it's going to happen in the future is a particular way of seeing. So how can we see it? How can we turn that around and see it differently? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like it just comes with this like trust that it's here, awakening is here, it's present, it's right now. And then really, feeling into that and knowing that, believing that, having confidence in that. And yeah, because that's another sankara that you can get really stuck with. But that's a very common pattern. But yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Some merit and then some announcements.
Yes.
Okay. I always get those two mixed up. The order. If there's any more questions or anything, you can always feel free to email me, or if there's still if something that's really there that need to help work through or need help through. Just pausing now and just coming back to the breathing. And just know that we're all breathing together as a sangha. And there's a particular joy in that. It's mudita. You can think of mudita as metta that meets beauty, or interconnection, joy, this recognition. So there's this joy that comes by practicing the Dhamma together and awakening together. And so my awakening is wrapped up in your awakening, and your awakening is wrapped up in my awakening, and all of us are in this together. And there's again, a joy in that. May our practice here together, may our time together, may it benefit all beings, this Sangha, this community, this planet. May all beings be free from suffering and the conditions of suffering. May all awaken. Thank you.